When God calls us to something, it often leads us outside of our comfort zone, but what he leads us towards has a great reward. This week, we get the opportunity to talk with Kyle and Manda about how God had led them to step out in faith and start a small group for married couples. Thanks for listening. Welcome to the Olive Shoots Family Podcast, where we talk about family and parenting, homesteading, and the things God is leading us towards. I'm Nathan.
And I'm Brittany. We've been married for 3 years, have one little boy, and just got our first piece of land where we plan to build and start our homestead. We are passionate about the family unit and getting back to the basics of the way God created us to live. We have big dreams and are learning what it looks like to pursue those dreams while first trusting God's leading.
Thank you so much for joining us on this journey. So this week we get to have a couple of our really close friends on the podcast, and they've actually been really important to us in this season of our life through this transition and this move, and the circle, the small group that we talk about quite frequently. They actually are the ones who lead it. So Kyle, Amanda, if you guys could just introduce yourselves and just share your season of life and kind of where you're at right now and a little bit about your family.
So I'm Kyle.
I'm Manda.
And we are, we're about to turn 30. We have one child, our first child. He is 2.5 months old, and we're learning how to kind of navigate that, how to parent, and just really how to lean on God in such a completely different phase of life. It's been challenging, but also just really rewarding. So, do you have anything to add to that?
Mm-hmm.
And so then, I don't know if you want us to just start.
Yeah, just jump in. And if you're really lucky, you'll get to hear their little newborn in the background.
Yeah, so basically we were just going to kind of share with y'all how God led us to where we are. And it's really interesting, and when you look back, just like almost everything that God leads us into, when you look back on your life over the last however many years, you'll just see God in all these different moments and how he was really guiding you to it, and you never saw it coming, you know. And so Amanda, if you want to kind of start with the first really God moment.
Yeah, so in our church we have circles, and I remember sitting in church, and we always sat behind our pastors, and I used to be a very shy person, didn't want to go and socialize, and I started getting convicted of going to a group, and I did not want to go by myself at all. And so I remember going, Victor and Susan, I said, is there a couples group we can join? And they were like, no, but since y'all said that must be y'all's path. Y'all should start one. And I told Kyle, and in my head I was like, that is not happening. And about less than a year later, there was a couple that moved from Louisiana to Arkansas, and they started a group called Couples for Christ. And Victor and Susan told them that they should invite us. And so around end of 2017, 2018, they invited us, and I had a barrel race, and I was like, yes, we don't have to go to this. And but guess what? It got canceled. God is so funny. But I was like, oh, we already told them we're not going to go to this group. And so I had a blonde moment and went to our pastor's ice cream shop. Yeah. And I don't know why we did that. And we get there, and they're like, what are y'all doing here? Aren't you supposed to be a group? And I was like, yeah, probably. I had a race, and it got canceled, and we decided that we will just come here instead. And so after that, they had it every Sunday, and so we were like, we're going to go next Sunday.
I think that it's interesting because, looking back at that moment, I question if we would have went the next week if we didn't have that encounter, you know, and you're actually wrong. So remember, when we started, it was every Friday.
Okay.
And then it became every Sunday. And so, but yeah, it's cool because whenever they pretty much joined our church, and then they started their group right after. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting. So I'm in clinicals for becoming a therapist, and I'm working at the school, and Daniel meets me at the school to give me like a handout and a book, and he's like, "You'll need to come," and so just that drive that he had to reach out to us. And I wasn't, unlike Manda, I wasn't really nervous about going to a group, but I also don't think I was as convicted to go. And then another thing I'll say real quick is, so Manda says she was really shy. I think most people didn't know she was shy because she talks well, but she didn't want to have a lot of conversation. She didn't want to meet a lot of new people. She could talk to anyone, but she didn't want to. And so
I didn't want to make the effort into making friends, because friends, I mean, you have to make time for them, and that was a lot, and I didn't really want to do that.
Yeah. So anyways, and we joined the circle, and we grew so much to learning more about Christ and just developing a relationship with Him. And it's like, what I realize now is that's the first time that I was ever discipled, and it kind of shows you the importance of it, because there's all these questions and all these things we didn't know, and just really having someone that can explain things to you and show you the deeper picture in the scripture and how important it is to apply to your life. And so they just really were that for us, and we're eternally grateful for them. And so onto like how our group started, it was interesting. Like, not long after we started the group, Daniel was like, "Hey, you're gonna be leading a group one day," and I was like, "No, I'm not. There's no way. Like, I can talk. I've always been able to talk, but I didn't know the Lord well enough. I didn't know the Scripture well enough, and I don't know if you ever feel fully equipped, as a caveat, but I felt completely unequipped. I felt like it would not be possible for me to lead a group, and so really just kind of brushed it off. And he would tell me every so often, you're going to lead a group. God's bringing you. He's raising you up to lead a group, and so on. I would ignore that, and then I joined a men's group, and the leader of the men's group, not long after then, said, "I think you're going to lead a group." And I said, "That's funny, because I don't think so, but so does Daniel." and so continued to kind of not think about it. And then one day our pastor was giving a message on what moves you with compassion, and I remember praying at the end of the message, I don't know, like, there's things I don't like in this world, there's things that I feel bad for people, but there's nothing that I was like, man, I feel like I need to help these people that are in this situation. And so I was just asked, like, God, show me. And I didn't get an answer that day. But shortly after that, a couple that we were really close to in that group ended up getting divorced. And it just completely wrecked us. And it was like, oh, this is it. Like, marriage is like, that's what's important to us. That's what God has put us here for. And so,
and I will say something like that too, is that it did break us, but it also was like we didn't see it coming, and we felt like we were friends, and we didn't. It breaks us heart that they couldn't come to us before they got to that point. And so we want our group, we want them to be lifelong friends. Like, we want them to come to us when they feel like they are lost or they're in a hole and they just need help. That's what we want. And so that's what really pushed me for this, because we do not, divorce is not an option for us. Yeah. And we don't want our friends to even think about it either.
Well, and I think that everything that takes you to that brink of falling apart is if you allow Christ into those things, that is what you will actually build your marriage on. Like, you will build it on Christ because He's what got you through it. And you look at these hard things and you go, if Christ wasn't with her giving me grace, then she would have left me. And then there's moments that are the opposite. And so, like I'm saying, like that, those are the things that I feel like a 50-year marriage, you look back and you remember those hard things, mm-hmm. and you remember, I didn't want to be around them during this time. I struggled with wanting to be the husband that she deserved or the wife that he deserved, and you remember how you overcame that and how God blessed you for it and he grew you closer for it. And so I think that's just we know that there's things that you need to talk about, and sometimes you need someone to talk to. Yeah. And so trying to develop a culture among our friends of there's no condemnation. Whatever you did, mm-hmm. we're not condemning you. Mm-hmm. We will never ever think worse of you, even if it's something that we couldn't have imagined ever struggling with, because there's going to be things that one couple struggles with that the other one doesn't. But I mean it when I say no matter what no matter what anyone's going through, I'm not going to condemn you, but we will stand on what the Scripture says and what's right, and try to help guide you to what Christ wants for you. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, to me that kind of sounds like it's come around full circle, where when you were first stepping out into joining another circle, joining that first couple circle, the phrase you said was it was the first time we had experienced discipleship, and now come full circle after having been discipled, figuring out what are we compassionate about, what is the Lord calling us to do, and what is he revealing in our life that he wants us to be a part of for his kingdom and for his mission. And out of that, you guys have begun discipling couples and discipling marriages, and so it's I just think it's really cool that how you guys started. It was like this step out moment, and it was uncomfortable, and it was difficult, and like, making friends is really hard when you're in your 20s or 30s. Like, it's hard, and so that's a moment of just being really uncomfortable. But you've taken that, and because of what the Lord showed you through that season of your life, you've transformed that into pouring into marriages and bringing about healthy marriages. And I think we experience that, and we feel that every week at group. We just can definitely see you guys in just how, not just in the teaching that you guys give, but in the hour and a half leading up to that it's about discipleship from beginning to end.
Yeah, and even just the text checkups throughout the week, and the being intentional, and what Kyle with the guys, Amanda with the girls, of just like, it's not we just want y'all to come to our house and hang out once a week. Like, it's obvious that y'all genuinely care about the relationships and marriages. Like, if without you saying that, it would have been evident that y'all are passionate about marriage. And I think that mm-hmm. proves what you're saying, that it is something you're passionate about.
Yeah. When you were going through that season of like other men who were a part of that discipleship process in your life, and they're telling you like, you're going to be a leader of a group, you're going to start a group, and you're like, I have no idea what I'm even called to do. I have no idea what I'm even compassionate about. So I don't even know where to begin in that. What did that process look like between you guys in the middle of that season, where maybe you feel like the Lord is tugging you in a direction, but you don't know exactly how to step into it yet?
Well, I think really, for me, I was initially I was like I literally just ignored it. I didn't respond, period. I didn't think about it. I didn't want to think about it, because I honestly just thought they were being crazy, and I don't want to completely I don't want to say that I didn't have any times where I was like, and I think it was in pride, and so I don't think it was good, but I think there was times where I'm like, look, almost like, oh man, they think so good of me, and so I remember those, but I also remember deeply not wanting that, and I think that was the spirit too, because if you knew me before this, that was like I wanted to be the cool guy. I treated people not the way I should treat them, and God really showed me grace for that. But then it led to, I don't know exactly when, but there was a point where it kind of flipped, and I was like, I do think we're going to lead a group. And so then I started telling her that, and she was going, no. Like, no way, it's not going to happen. And then that kind of led to the next kind of step in our story of one night there we had a new couple come to group, and I don't want to say that was the first time. I believe they came a few times. And there was actually a season where our leader of that group was like, because he wants leaders out of his group, and so he had this time where it was like, if you have something that you're compassionate about that you feel like God's giving you, I want you to come talk to the group about it. And so this new couple, the woman spoke, and at the end, she said this. So if you'll go ahead.
So I remember talking about. Well, I don't remember what we were talking about, but I remember saying something, and she was kind of going back and forth with us talking, and then afterwards, she knew us, but she didn't know us, and she sat across there, and she said, "Y'all are gonna lead a group together." And I looked at her, and I looked at Kyle, and I said, "Is that not confirmation or what?" And I said, "I guess that's a sign that's it. That's for me. I needed that. I needed God to literally say the words in front of me from somebody that didn't know me, and it like woke me up." And because we've always talked about marriage in our, just me and him talking about it. And so somebody saying, "Hey, y'all are going to lead a couples group," I was just like, okay, like this is it. This is what we need to do. And so, do you want to say something?
Yeah. So one of the reasons we always talked about marriage is because we feel that God has truly blessed us in our marriage, and we've always had a very easy communication with each other, and so problems never seemed that big. And I'm not going to say we've never had issues and that we've never had to go through things. Obviously we have, but it would be like, and I think this was part of the process too. We would, especially through the group, we would find out, oh, this person is fighting about this, or they're fighting all the time, or whatever it might be, and we would go like, I don't understand, and it's not that we weren't compassionate towards them, but we're like, we want them to have what we have.
We want to help them.
Yeah, and that's really, I think, where God, again, looking back on the story, God was already kind of like preparing us for the next step. And then also, I want to say, like, when Manda was, when she looked at me and said, "Oh, I guess that's confirmation," she was not, like, happy about it.
Sure.
Like, she was like she was super nervous because she's like, oh,
she's
no.
She's like, dang it.
We're going to be doing this.
Yep.
So, and do y'all have any questions?
I think it's super cool hearing that whole, and like y'all to put dates to that of just in comparison to where we were at, not living here at the time, and how God lined y'all up to start this circle, which is the only couples circle for this age group right now, and has been, and just like where our story of coming from and really longing for that, just the community that y'all had already started forming before we moved here, to where we were able to jump in, and that had like been working out for 3 years before we even moved here, and it's been a huge blessing since we've been here. And it's just cool to, like, I don't know, that connection of, had that not happened, where would we be at now if they didn't have that circle? Like, we wouldn't have that community, and y'all wouldn't have the community that's formed from it. And I don't know, it's just really cool.
Sure.
Yeah, it is. When do you guys still feel like it, like leading the marriage group? Do you guys still feel like it's super challenging and like uncomfortable, or how is that different now than it was when y'all were first starting?
Not uncomfortable. We started in September of 2021, and I remember going to other leaders of circles and being like, is this going to be like, how are we going to make everybody friends? Because I felt like it was still awkward silence, and I was like, how's this going to work? And God just literally blessed the group after that. It was crazy. Like everybody's like best friends now. And it just, that part just became so comfortable. Like it blows my mind actually.
I mean, honestly, it was never really uncomfortable.
Right.
We were nervous that it would be. Mm-hmm. But even from the beginning, from the small group sitting around the table, you know, all the way to the sometimes 20 plus people, you know,
sitting around the dining room table, island, kitchen now.
Yeah, they just remodeled their home so that they could fit more people, and it's already full.
It's already needs to be remodeled again.
Yeah, and everybody's stuck now.
But yeah, no, I don't think, maybe the first day we were, and if anyone was uncomfortable, it was us, and there was this supernatural comfort that people felt, and
they just kept coming back.
Yeah, and so it's just one of those things where you really realize that I don't want to say it has nothing to do with you, because you do have to be obedient and open the door, but if you're walking in what God has for you, it will be so much easier than you ever think it will be. And I always say that, like, people don't show up because of us. People show up because of Jesus, and they're getting something. And every time everyone leaves, we have to fight the fight with the enemy of saying, why us? Mm-hmm. You know, why do they come here? You know, and I truly believe that the only reason I believe this is because people keep coming back, but I truly believe that Jesus is meeting people there.
Yeah.
And I don't say that in I feel like we have a healthy relationship with our Lord, but it's hard to, and I don't know if you ever fully feel like you're worthy of hosting the King of Kings, right? And creating these meetings with him. I don't know if you ever feel worthy, and I don't really ever want to. I think my prayer is to keep a humble heart. So, but on the other side of that, you said, is it the challenging? And the answer is, I don't think it will ever not be challenging. And I hope it's not, because just as we grew being discipled, I think we grow more discipling. Mm-hmm. And anyone that leads in the church, anyone that I've ever talked to that leads in the church will say, teaching made me grow more, because I need to know it. If I'm going to teach it, I better know it good. And
then you're even more held accountable to walk it out.
Yeah.
Actually, that's actually a blessing. It's such a blessing. Dealing and being the man that God called you to be is easier whenever you have people that are looking up to you. Mm-hmm. And I know that there's always that chance of people becoming prideful in their leadership and wanting and abusing that. But the way God designed it is, we're leading these 20 people. All of those people are looking to us, and they're saying they are saying that this marriage this way is possible. Mm-hmm. So we have to deal with our stuff. Mm-hmm. We like when we're struggling with something, it can't last, because come Wednesday we better have our stuff taken care of, because we need to be able to show that through Christ it's possible. Like, he gives us freedom, and so really it's just like this amazing blessing that we had no idea that it would be.
Yeah, I think that's just you guys fully walking in the calling that the Lord has put on your hearts. That when y'all are, teaching and leading and leading not just in those conversations, but leading by example and leading in the way that you guys live out your lives, you're living out the calling that he's placed on your hearts, which is to be leaders in our church. And that uncomfortability of starting something or starting, when you feel like you're being led or you're being called to something, there's always that moment of like, are you sure, Lord? Is this really what you're wanting us to do? And that first step is just like what you said. I think it's mostly in our heads, and I don't think that's unique to just y'all's calling. I think that's just calling in general. That when the Lord leads us to things, most of the time He's not leading us into comfort. He's leading us out of it, and
the enemy doesn't want us to do whatever the Lord's calling us to. So I think it's like even more so under attack of like feeling scared or nervous or are you sure that's me? I'm not good enough to do that. It's like I feel like the more we're under attack in those when we are feeling so convicted at the same time, it's not, but it should be even more obvious that it is from God, because it's so obvious that the enemy doesn't want it to happen.
Well, and then the second part of that is just the difficulty of it, that I think sometimes we shy away from the things that God is calling us to because we want it to be easy. And the challenge of it is what produces growth, right? The challenge of having to figure out, okay, what are we going to talk about this week? And if we're going to talk about this topic, then what are the different angles that we need to know in order to approach it? Like, that's hard work, and it takes time and an effort. And especially you two leading as a team, like, that's another conversation on top of the prep and everything. So it's hard work, but walking in that calling is never going to be easy. But when you begin walking that way, it becomes normal, and it becomes practiced and not fearful, I think.
Do you ever have trouble turning your mind off when your head hits the pillow or getting a good restful night's sleep? We've struggled with that often lately. Between dreaming up new ventures, the long to-do list, and just winding down from the day, it can be difficult to get the much-needed sleep. We've started using Earthly Wellness Goodnight Lotion, and it has made a huge difference. It has helped us to fall asleep faster and to feel more rested when we wake up in the morning. It is rich in magnesium, which has loads of health benefits and helps promote restful sleep and normal sleep cycles. You just apply a small amount, 10 to 15 minutes before you go to bed. And pregnant or nursing mamas, it's healthy and safe for you too. It also helps relieve those leg and muscle cramps that seem to happen in the middle of the night. We can't recommend it enough. If you are interested, click the link in our show notes and check out all the other amazing Earthly products while you're at it. We have grown to love this company because they carry natural, organic, made in the USA products that actually work and are safe for our little babies and kiddos as well. Yes, the link does help support our family. Earthly is generous enough to give a small percentage back to me if you use my link. So thank you so much in advance for your support. And we hope you like the Goodnight Lotion as much as we do.
I guess that kind of leads into like one of the other things that we really talk about with families is knowing where you're going, knowing your calling, knowing your mission, and where you're headed as a family, as a couple. In an episode a few weeks ago, we had a guy on, and he said like that destination, knowing that destination is the most important thing you can have as a couple. So like, how have y'all felt that change as in your marriage and starting your family with a little newborn? Like, how have y'all felt God leading you and calling you into something super difficult, but also a calling that brings peace, not ease, but peace in your life?
So, interestingly enough, through listening to y'all's podcast, I was actually talking to her recently about, we've never really sat down and said, like, this is our goal. This is our goal for the next year, the next 5 years, whatever. And So that's something that we really want to do. We just haven't done it just quite yet. But it is interesting because we do have like generic goals of, this is where we want to be. We want to have a home and a farm, and we want to grow our own vegetables and raise some livestock, and ideally have like a community with friends that we can really just trade between, and whatever that looks like, and developing that system will come. But like just getting to a more natural, healthier lifestyle is really our big, I think one of our big goals. But the interesting thing is a few years ago, while we've always been a little health conscious, that wasn't really a part of our thought process. And then even back to having kids, for our whole first 7 years of marriage and the 2 years dating before that, we always say, well, I mean, if we have kids, it'll be around when we're 30, so that way we don't die or we don't grow old and we're alone. And that was really it. Like that was the reason that we thought, the only reason we even talked about having kids is because we didn't want to be alone when we were old. And then we start the group, and within like 9 months, God has just really changed our hearts. And then in a span of about 4 months, there's 3 other people pregnant that are going to be having their babies right around the time we are, and then 3 more that are going to be having them a few months after. And so it's like this really cool thing of something that we didn't even know was if we wanted. God already knew that we needed people in place to help us through this. And so he's given us this family of people that, like, most importantly, they love him. And then they also love us, and they love our son, and they're going to help us raise him to be who he's supposed to be and who God's called him to be. And hopefully we can do that for their children. And so it's this really cool community that is exactly what we needed long before we thought we would ever need it. And even couples that didn't think they were going to be able to have kids, and God has given them children. And
that's what I was going to say. Like, all the couples, not all of them, but there was a handful of them that didn't even know they wanted kids either. So we were all in this phase of life together, and then all of our hearts, it's just, God knew that we all needed to be together at this time in our lives. And I don't know if we'll all be together forever, because some people might be led to other things, but it's cool to know that we have each other right now in that way.
Yeah. It's really cool. And so one thing is just in leading the group, we've had some really good seasons where we feel like, oh man, we're doing what the Lord wants us to do. And then we've had a few other seasons where we're like, we think this is what he wants us to do, but we're not sure, and we're just trying to get through. And then God leads us to this season, which I truly believe is all, like, I just believe that there's going to be a lot of freedom coming. And I don't know when. I don't know the timeline. I don't know if it's one couple this year, the next couple the next year. And I don't know. But I really believe that there's going to be some really good breakthroughs and really godly marriages that are going to be pillars of the community, and it's going to I believe it's going to have a ripple effect, and people are going to see these couples and see these families and not understand why they are doing so well, and they're going to want that. And I can see the kingdom. I can see the plan of what God's going to do through this group. And it just comes back to how humbled we are to be a part of it, that he would choose us to grow his church in this way, and to raise up children that will also grow the church. And I hope change the culture. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I know that I talked a lot.
I mean, one of the things you said was just like y'all were both like, maybe we'll have kids one day, but maybe that's down the road. And just how did that play out in y'all's relationship of like, okay, we feel like the Lord is leading us to this. We feel like the Lord is leading us to children. And what did that look like for y'all?
I don't know.
Well, I remember one time I just literally said, I can't believe it, but I think God's changing our hearts, or changing my heart.
Oh, yeah, because I think my heart changed first.
Yeah.
That's right, yeah. So I was like, I really think I would like, to have a kid with you. And we were both, but it wasn't like...
Definitely with me.
Yeah, well, you know what I meant. But, like, it was like...
She meant Burr the kid.
Yes, exactly. And I was like, I don't know the timing yet, but my heart was for sure changing. And then I think it's probably, like, a couple months.
Oh,
for
yeah.
Sure.
So it was probably, like, April. And... because it was a few months before we went on vacation, and when we went on vacation was the first time that we were like checking, are you pregnant or not, And so, but I remember it was God had been working on me for a while, and the thought of having a kid became more and more like appealing, and I just remember saying, hey, I think God's changing my heart. I don't know what else this could be, because I never wanted kids, and so that was a really cool thing of just he'd been doing it, but then finally like me coming to the realization.
And like that's what I was gonna say is like part of us I for sure, and I think you agreed, we didn't want kids because we didn't want to raise them in this culture. But it was like we need to raise kids and raise world changers. Like we need to raise kids to change our world and change help our community out. And I think like that's because I struggled with like I'm not gonna raise a kid in this, and that's where that really hit us. And we're gonna raise disciples, and that's that pushed us, I feel like, to the next step.
Yeah, and I think that there's like this realization that the world is bad, but it's always been bad, and it's probably always going to be bad.
Yep.
And
not always.
Well, yeah.
Eventually.
Okay. Yeah. Obviously not always. Always is a strong word, but until the new kingdom, it's a bit corrupted, right? So, so like that kind of hit us is like the disciples, and this was something that was a really hard thing to kind of come to grips with having a kid. It was a good thing, but my realization was, all right, especially once we found out we're having a son, but my realization was I want him to be like the apostles. I want him to be like Peter and Paul, and then understanding the lives that they had, and understanding that if I want him to be like that, that's a possibility for his life. And I know that right now that persecution isn't happening in our culture at the moment, and I hope and pray that that's not what comes for him. And I want him to have a long, healthy life, but most importantly, I want him to serve the Lord. And so, but the point is that they changed through the power of Christ. They changed countless lives. They're still changing lives, and I want that. I want God to be able to do that through my son as well. And if he's going to do that, he can do that no matter what the culture is, and no matter how terrible things are. And so, and also just remembering that if he loves the Lord, no matter how many years we have now, we have eternity. And so, trying not to have a world or limited view, and trying to have this eternal view of what God has for us eternally. So,
I work in construction, and it's pretty regular that I ache and hurt after a long day's work. But I also want a healthy and natural solution to my pain without the long-term side effects that come from over-the-counter pills. I've been turning to Earthly's Pain Potion for day-to-day relief. Its pain-relieving and anti-inflammatory herb combination have helped me to start my day after waking up sore and to rest after lifting heavy objects all day long. When I need extra or more targeted relief, I use Earthly's Pain Relief Rub with St. John's wort, yarrow, and full-spectrum CBD. Just rub a small amount of the cream on the painful areas for fast soothing and quick relief. The Pain Relief Rub is also safe for pregnant and breastfeeding mothers, as well as children ages 1 and up. I recommend both the Pain Potion and the Pain Relief Rub because they help me get back to my work when I need it most, but also because they are made by a family-owned, made in the USA, and organic company. If you are interested, click the link in the show notes and check out other Earthly Wellness products while you're there. Yes, the link does help support our family. Earthly is generous enough to give a small percentage back to us if you use our link. But I wouldn't be endorsing them if I didn't truly believe in their products.
Yeah, I think two different things that y'all said. One was like just the fear of wanting to have a kid in this culture. I think so many people, so many Christians of our generation feel that, and the generations following. It's just like it seems so messed up, and it's like that overprotective parent before you even have a kid. Like, I don't want my kid to have to deal with this. I don't want to have to teach my kid about that. I don't want to, and it's just becomes even more real after you have them. But then, like you said, of we want our kids to be those world changers. And I remember when we like decided on Emerson's name, and we're like, it means brave mighty warrior, and that's like awesome, and we were all excited about it. Yeah. And then I don't remember if it was before he was born or after, but just that realization of we are naming him this, and we're claiming this over him in some way, and we want him to know he's a brave mighty warrior, and we want him to be that for Jesus. And then it's like, okay, well, that same type of weight of like, that's gonna come with that's probably gonna push us more than it pushes him in some ways, of just like the things that God could use him for are, there's a good chance is gonna make the parents us more uncomfortable than it makes him at times. Mm-hmm. And that's scary too. So it's like definitely God's grace in our lives, and just realizing that we are, like we've been talking about, ambassadors for our kids, and that's our ultimate calling, and just praying for them is our ultimate, like that's the most important things we can do, even though our personal desire is just to protect, and we would want the world to be perfect so that our kid could have a perfect life if we had everything the way we wanted it, but that's not reality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember we went to Kyle and I went to a men's conference last year, and it was a few of the guys from our marriage group were just hanging out in the room, and we were talking about this idea of like our kids being world changers, and our kids being like just like difference makers in our world. And I remember we started talking about this idea of like we're raising dangerous men, like we're raising dangerous children in our culture, and this story just popped in my head of like in the early church there was like a bishop or a church leader or someone, and this ruling king called him in and was like, hey, you can't be preaching about Jesus anymore, like we don't do that here, and you need to stop. And he refused to stop, and the king was like, if you don't stop, I'm going to sick my dogs on you. Like I'm going to sick my wild animals on you, and they're going to rip your flesh and tear you apart and kill you. And the guy responds, and he just goes, bring on the beasts. And it's just like this, like the coolest action movie phrase in the world, but it's about serving the kingdom to the fullest extent. and that idea of just like we're raising, we as a father to a boy, I'm raising a dangerous man in the world to come, and by wanting him to change the world, bringing about change in the world is inherently dangerous. And so just the weight of it, but also I think the healthy responsibility of it is just, it's a great motivator as parents, but it's also just this kneeling at the cross moment of, it's going to take everything I have, and then I still won't be able to do it. So Jesus, this is on you, and we're just going to follow you and do the best we can to raise our kids.
Yeah, I think even bringing that around to, like we've been talking about the whole time, the community that God was working beforehand, and just how important that all is as we are raising these kids that we are hoping chase after God with everything they have, that we're doing that with other parents that are raising their kids that want to do the same thing, or hope that our kids all do that, and they have each other and we have each other. Like, it's just this, I think it's just so important to have that community, and if you don't have that community and you're in a church or whatever that doesn't, then be the Kyle and Mandas that step out and let them be your motivation to start that, because it's been a blessing, and it's a blessing for the kids in that group that are getting to hang out and get to know each other and go from there, as they are all, as we're all trying to chase after Jesus.
Yeah. So at the very beginning of this, you guys mentioned you have, how old now? Is it 10 weeks?
Yes.
10 weeks. What has God been showing you since your first child, the birth of your first child? Just kind of walk us through what God's doing in your lives.
Well, it's a lot, and so a lot of it comes down to the fact that it was a rough start, and God showed us so much of who He is, and I mean,
I would like to just say, like, while you think for a second, is that it reminded us that sometimes you have to go through hard things, not only for yourself to grow, but watch other people around you grow in faith more than they probably would have ever went through, and they didn't even go through it, but they were with you. But
yeah,
that's something that I realized, that like you can grow even if it doesn't happen to you. Like being, and it goes back to community. Just thinking about that just now, is that you're going to grow closer to the Lord, even if somebody else is going through something. And so,
well, and so as just raising him, it's been really interesting, because I've talked to Manda a lot about how I've not been really nervous with him. I wasn't nervous with him even in the hospital. And I think a lot of that is because of how much we went through. and just to kind of give a really quick kind of paraphrase, is just he shouldn't be alive, and Manda could have not been alive, and it was incredibly traumatic, but it showed so much. It showed me like how it showed me the embodiment of Romans when it says the Spirit intercedes with moanings and grumblings, when he's praying the will of the Father, and because I can't pray the words. I didn't have words to pray. I'm just saying, Jesus, please, and then the Spirit is interceding, and he's praying for me, and then just seeing God, and you're in the valley, it's your lowest point, and I liked what another member of the church said. She said, in the bottom of the valley, the veil is at its thinnest, and so seeing God, and God has showed us so much of who He is through our son, and then there's this other aspect that there's so much in the Bible, and there's this father-son or father-daughter relationship that God always talks about in His Word. And if you're not a parent, and I know there's people that aren't called for that. I know that there are people that even Scripture talks about. It's better, and I'm butchering it, but it's better to not have children if you're burned with lust, then you should marry. But I do think that God calls most of us to motherhood or fatherhood, because I think that it helps us understand our relationship with Him so much more. And there's so many scriptures that you read it now and it means so much more, and it's so different. And I don't think I could ever understand it fully without Him. And I mean, I can talk for hours, but it's really that.
I feel like this is the hardest thing. I mean, I haven't talked about this, but this is the hardest thing I've ever went through in my entire life. Yeah, I agree. Okay. So, I mean, my faith, I thought, and Kyle will tell you, like, you say, like, my number one.
Her number one trait
is faith. And it grew even more that night than it ever.
Yeah, it's actually so cool. So I want to share this. So when early on in the pregnancy, before we even knew the gender, I got a vision, and it was about Noble and him leading people to Christ. And so I told Manda, like, maybe a month before labor, probably not, but I told her, I said, I don't worry about you anymore. I used to worry about her when she was driving, or something going to happen to her, she's going to have a wreck, and all these things. And I used to worry, and I was like, I don't worry about you anymore, because I know what the plans that God has for him, and you have to be okay for him to be okay. And so I wasn't worried about her, which that kind of went out the window whenever he was born, gray. But what's funny is she said, pray over him. And I'm like, I'm trying. And she said, as soon as I said that, she had complete peace. And she remembered what I had told her, that God had plans for him. And so, and when she told me that, initially my first thought was, why didn't he give me peace? But I think that it was my duty as his father and as her husband to fight the fight for them whenever they couldn't anymore.
And I don't know if you, like, and he prayed in front of every single person in that room, like on his face, on his knees, in that delivery room, and I know that grew people's face, seeing you at your lowest point. Yeah. And so, I mean, it was cool, but also, everybody will tell you there's so many people praying in that room, but it was just, and I struggle with, like, why did I not struggle? But then I'm like, the Holy Spirit knew I needed not to struggle, because I did not have anything left, and I needed that peace. She was on
the verge of hemorrhaging too.
Yes, and so I had people watching over me, trying to get me to take care of myself. And so it was just, I look back at it, and I just, like, I love that he gave me that, but then I also love that people got to see Kyle pray to our Father, and the miracle happened. The miracle happened in everybody's eyes in that room, and watch our son come to life. And so, but
yeah,
it was just we're closer to the Lord than we've ever been. So,
and we will say that we did not want that. That wasn't the plan. We don't want it again. But we wouldn't change it for anything. And I wouldn't give up the relationship that I have now with the Father, now with Jesus, the trust that I have in him now. I wouldn't give that for anything. And it's really hard to say this, but I do believe that I believe it. I would go through anything that he'll have me go through to trust him more, because the amount that he grew our faith there, again, it's I wouldn't give it for anything. And so in saying that, I'm inevitably kind of saying I'll go through anything to grow more, which is a very scary and hard prayer to pray, but it's also worth it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Do you guys feel like because y'all have been through that and you've seen in the middle of like your hardest moment in life, I think a lot of stories in the Bible would call that like the pit, or like the darkest place, or like the deepest struggle. You've been in the pit and you've made it out of it. How has that shaped, just in these last few months, how has that shaped how you love and interact with your son, in just the day-to-day simple things? And going through that, has it made it easier to take care of him, or to sacrifice for him, and or give him grace, or any of those things?
Well, do you want to go first?
You go ahead.
So for me, it's really interesting. So I have like such a desire to make my home the place that is the best possible environment for him to see the Lord, know the Lord, and become who he's supposed to be. And so that's like reevaluating my hobbies, reevaluating my time. You know, what am I doing when I get home? What am I doing? And I'd like to say that made it just this immediate switch of all these habits that I've developed go away. But what it has done is it's made me aware of the things I need to change and help me start the process. And there's things that I know will I know are going to change. I'm just not there yet to fully change all of them, and trying to walk it out and do it. And I have days where I do really well and days where I do not so well, but God is trying to make me the man that can raise the world changer. And so I'm trying to just be obedient to his change in my daily monotonous life. Like, and I don't mean that in that, you know, I don't mean that in that it's not every hour and every minute's not important. I don't mean that at all. But just at work, changing what I'm doing at work. As soon as I get home, no matter how tired I am, changing what I go to. And the things that we think are monotonous, changing it from, oh, I'm just tired, to this is the time you have today with your family. So so it's really just another avenue of God molding me to be who I'm supposed to be. But there's more weight behind it because it's not for me. So that's my side of it. How
I was just gonna say, like, for me, so I am blessed that I'm going to get to. Right now, I get like 4 months off completely, but he is like a daily reminder of what God can do in so many different ways. And I can stay here and explain all that, but it's just, I get to hold this baby and just remember that God can do anything. And it's amazing. And so it's like I can get through anything. If I'm having a bad day, I can sit here and look at him and remember that God's with me and I got this. And so, but that's my big thing that I feel like has happened.
Well, I think for Manda too, that she's not realizing or not applying to this moment, and maybe I'm applying something that doesn't need to be applied, but she is. I think most people can relate to this. There's very few people that just really love their job. Like literally, they love their job. Like, she absolutely loves doing therapy with children, and until he was 6-7 months pregnant, the thought of her taking a an hourly cut to her schedule was like non-existent. And then it started to be like, well, maybe I shouldn't work as much. And I remember I've told multiple people, I don't know if I ever told you, but I've told multiple people that whenever she said that, I'm like, she's not going to want to work as much. Like, I don't even know if she's going to want to work at all, because she's never talked about not working. Like, working was like that's what she loved. And so then it became very obvious that once he was born, okay, we got to cut hours. Like, she's got to have to be home with him. And it also became, like, it really hit me. I married you. I trust you. I want you to raise our son. And I trust other people too. We have amazing people. And we have people that will help and watch them that we trust, and that we line up with on where we are with God and all these things, but they're not her. And I think that y'all would say the same. You know, you are going to raise your kids because you're their mother and you're the best person to raise them. And so it's been cool to see God change her heart and use Noble to turn her into the mother she was always meant to be. And it's also just, it's really awesome to see her step into that and want to be that for him. Because honestly, I was a little nervous getting, like, before, like, whenever I first started thinking, oh, I want you to be there with him. I was getting nervous because I don't want to push her into something she doesn't want. And so it's really nice that God, like, lined up our hearts. And it's not exactly the perfect thing, but it's much better than we thought we would be able to do.
And it goes back to our group. I just told Kyle, like, this week that I'm excited. One of the reasons I'm excited is because a lot of our group are stay-at-home mamas, and I didn't get to be part of that. And I was excited that maybe we can still keep up our Tuesday mom walks because I'm not working. And so I even get to be more involved in this mom community that I probably wasn't going to be able to get to if I worked. And so that just goes back to our group, that I'm just so thankful for the community that we are in. And God's blessed us with being, our group is like we're all around the same, doing all about the same stage of life right now. And I just think that's so perfect and so awesome.
And I want to say also, just if you're listening and you want to stay home, the truth is that it is a sacrifice. Like, it's not easy to go on one paycheck. And if you can find someone that they were a stay-at-home mom and talk to them and their husband, and that they've been doing it for years, they'll tell you, we sacrificed. We maybe didn't have the nicest car. We maybe didn't have the nicest house.
I mean, somebody just told us today that they ate Pop-Tarts for dinner.
Yeah.
To make it work.
She said for she can't remember how many nights they had Pop-Tarts for dinner because that's all they could afford. Mm-hmm. But she wouldn't trade it for anything. And so it's not, I don't say this to condemn anyone that's not staying at home with their children.
We're just giving you the
But if that's what you want, there's nothing that is worth giving it up. There's no fancy car or nice house or jewelry or whatever it is. There's no monetary thing that is more important. So, and if you can't, then we'll pray for you.
Yeah. I heard something like, I don't know, maybe a week or two ago. I don't think I told you this. They were talking about stay-at-home moms and the economic value that a stay-at-home mom or even just like a part-time stay-at-home mom has. And it was something like, it was something in the range of like $200,000 a year for a mom. And they were basically saying, like, to do all the cooking, to do all the cleaning, to do childcare and teaching, and just like all of those things combined. Just like, if you think about it, if you were to if you were to hire that out, it's like this massive thing. So it's absolutely a sacrifice. I think everyone would say that, because it is hard, but also there is value that can't be measured. But there is also just inherent value of a practical value of having someone in the home who, the term is homemaker, who can make the house a home, and those things take time and money if you're having someone else do it. So yeah, it's super valuable, and it is a sacrifice. We feel pretty strongly that it's a good thing for mamas to be with their kiddos. Yeah. But yeah, we just want to say thank you guys. This was actually cool for us because this is the first podcast episode where we've gotten to have people come into our home and record live. So we've actually been sitting across from Kyle and Manda, which is new for us, but also really cool. And I think just to wrap it all up, just the value of community, that doing life together, but doing life together as you're walking into what the Lord is leading you into. And whether that's family, whether that's starting a group of your own, wherever you're at, just walking into that calling of, Lord, what do you want for me? What do you want for our family? What do you want us to be doing 40 years in the future? And how can we begin to walk in that today? And then that second piece is, and who are you going to surround us with to do it? I think those things are just so important. And so, yeah, thank you guys so much for sharing. It was really special to us. So I won't do my normal spiel. I'll just say thank you guys for listening, and we'll catch you next week. See ya.